Meeting, nope, not yet. Morning, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order at 9:21 a.m. Item 1, we're up to the third point on it, and I'll read it. During the public meeting portion of the proceedings, the following procedure will be taken for each application being considered. I will announce the application in order as listed on the agenda. Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, will summarize her findings and give recommendations. The applicants will be asked if they wish to add any further information or comments. All participants will be unmuted for this portion of the proceedings. The public will be asked if they wish to make any comments on the application. In order to be recognized by the chair, please approach by stating through you, Madam Chair, your name, and I would like to make comments regarding this application. Once the chair has recognized you, you may be able to speak. The next thing is the territorial land acknowledgement. Before our meeting gets underway, I would like to formally recognize the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Alma-Calderman is located on the Mississauga Anishinaabeg territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg. The Township of Alma-Calderman respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. Approval of the agenda as circulated. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting agenda of Thursday, November 25th, 2021 be approved as circulated.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Hogg, second by Councillor Phillip. All in favor? Carried. We don't have any addendums added? No. Approval of the minutes. Item 5, be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting minutes of Thursday, October 28th, 2021 be received and filed. That's the direction. Moved by Councillor Booth, second by Councillor Hogg. All in favor? Carried. Okay, I got to kind of get twisted here so I can see Sherry and Mike. We have the public meeting now for the zoning applications, and the first one is Isabel Boisfair and Richard Clark, bylaw Z17 2021. And this is to tidy up, complete the severance application, both of these. Jennifer?
Through you, Mayor Latchford. The first zoning bylaw amendment application is application Z17 2021. It pertains to a property located at 157 Nickel Road, and the property is located on the east side of Nickel Road. The purpose of this application is to permit a wedding venue on the wedding or special events venue on the property that would be used for weddings and other similar events. Events would be limited to the use of a marquee tent and trailered washroom facilities. There would be no permanent structures located on the property. This property is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine, and there are key hydrologic features within 120 meters, they're located on the property and within 120 meters of that area to be used for the special events venue area. And as such, they were required to complete a hydrologic evaluation. A hydrologic evaluation was completed and submitted with the application in support of the application. And the location of the marquee tent site it was discussed and determined in that hydrologic evaluation to ensure that there would be no negative impact on the hydrologic features. So we'll just start at the beginning. The property is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine. It's a large property. It's 44 hectares. It's located on the north side of County Road 22 and the east side of Nickel Road. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling, accessory dwelling unit, and an accessory buildings. The buildings are clustered together approximately 155 meters from Nickel Road. So they're set back quite a bit from Nickel Road. And there are two ponds located on either side of the main driveway along the property frontage. There's two driveways that access this property. The main driveway, which accesses the cluster of buildings, and then another entrance further to the south that is proposed to be used as the access to the proposed parking area on the property. This property was previously used, I believe it was a landscape company or a landscape operation for a number of years, and that's why they had the two entrances on the property. There's a water course that was identified on the property, which is close to a wooded area north of the building cluster. There's numerous agricultural properties located in this area of the municipality, and agriculture is the prominent land use. There's some scattered rural residential development in the general area. A few farms were located in the area. The property is designated Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Rural, Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Agricultural, Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Core, Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Linkage, all on Schedule C5 to the official plan. Now, the area subject to this application is located in the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Rural area. There's no environmental features on the land that are proposed to be used as the special events venue. So they did submit there are natural heritage features, both a water course and a wetland, and they submitted their hydrologic evaluation, which addressed both of those features. In the hydrologic evaluation, natural heritage evaluation was prepared by Terra Story Environmental Consulting, Inc. And they indicated that the natural heritage system consists of high functioning and supporting terrestrial and aquatic natural heritage features, buffers, and complementary natural heritage areas. So in the preparation of the report, they considered both the proposed marquee tent, the small storage areas that I believe they're proposing further south. They're not exactly in the same area as the marquee tent. They're further away from the area. And all of this is to take place within a manicured amenity area that is currently manicured and serves as an amenity area for the building cluster. So no new land would have to be cleared or anything for the proposed application. And within the natural heritage and hydrologic evaluation, they require the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe requires a 30-meter vegetative protective zone between a land use and the natural heritage features. So on figure 3 to the natural heritage and hydrologic evaluation, I believe I attached it as an attachment to this report. They've identified an area of the currently manicured property that has to be naturalized. So it's not the entire 30-meter buffer along the entire extent of the natural features, but there is an area within close proximity to the proposed marquee tent, which needs to be naturalized in order to maintain the required 30-meter vegetative protective zone. The county official plan, the property is designated Oak Ridges Moraine. We've discussed the Oak Ridges Moraine plans. The county commented that the application conforms to the intent of the county OP as it rezones lands to permit an on-farm diversified use that is permitted use within the countryside rural designation. The property is currently zoned Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside, Oak Ridges Moraine Plan Review, Oak Ridges Moraine Environmental, and Oak Ridges Moraine Linkage Zones on Schedule B to the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman Official Plan. The proposed special events venue is located on that portion of the property that is zoned Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Zone, which the uses that include agricultural uses, agricultural related uses, home businesses, home occupations, and a number of other similar type uses. A special events venue, not surprisingly, is not permitted in that zone. It's a rather unique land use, and that's why they require a zoning bylaw amendment. So what we're proposing is a Oak Ridges, that portion of the property located in the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Zone be rezoned to the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Exception 8 Zone to permit an outdoor special events venue without any permanent buildings. The application was reviewed by a number of agencies. We received several comments. I'm sorry, in the agency circulation section of the report, I just noticed that I had referenced Lower Trent Conservation. This application is actually within the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority, it's just watershed, and we did receive comments from GRCA. GRCA commented that they have reviewed the application in the Natural Heritage and Hydrologic Evaluation prepared by Territorial, and GRCA found the report satisfactory as an appropriate setback will be maintained from the natural features. So GRCA had no objections to the proposed application. The county had no objections from the proposed application. We also received comments from Alderville First Nation who had no concerns. The application was reviewed by the Manager of Public Works, who confirmed that sight lines are adequate and that the existing entrance is sufficient. He did note that some minor brushing is going to be required within the municipal road allowance, and the culvert will need to be cleaned out. Works that the Public Works Department can do. Public circulation was undertaken and provided to all registered landowners within 120 meters of the property on November 5th, and a sign was posted on the property on that same day. One telephone inquiry was made by an area resident requesting additional information regarding the proposed development. I sent them a copy of the air photo with the application illustrating the location of the proposed tent area, parking area, washroom trailers, and they were satisfied with the information provided. No other public comments have been received to date. So my recommendation is that the proposed special events venue provides a rural economic development opportunity for the municipality compatible with surrounding rural and agricultural land uses. Parking will be provided on site. There'll be no permanent structures associated with the proposed venue tent, but they're going to be using those large wedding tents and washroom trailers that will be brought onto the site and then subsequently removed. The zoning that I'm recommending, it will include a naturalized 30-meter vegetative protective zone as illustrated on the, I believe it's figure 3 to the Territorial Natural Heritage and Hydrologic Evaluation. So the application meets the intent of the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman Official Plan. The township zoning bylaw is consistent with the provincial policy statement, growth plan, and the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan. The recommendation is that the application be approved.
Comments from the applicants? Is there anything you'd like to speak on? From the public? Questions from council? Councillor Booth?
Thank you, Jennifer, for the information provided here. It's very complete. Just one question. Does this information now get forwarded on to the fire chief so that the fire department is aware that now there's going to be social gatherings there, more than likely in the better weather in the summer, and that maybe the inspector goes out there to make sure that before they start that they've got fire extinguishers or they're meeting all the fire code and everything?
Yes, I can make sure that the application is forwarded to the fire chief. This application doesn't include any permanent structures. However, I believe the marquee tents require a building permit application when they go up, because they are covered. They have to, I believe, check out the anchors and that sort of thing for them, but I will forward it to the fire chief.
Okay, thank you.
No, I have no
Someone from
questions.
RCA with their hand up.
Okay. RCA? Must be Richard, is it? Clark?
I think that RCA will need to mute or unmute their phone or computer in order to speak.
I am unmuted. It should be working. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello? Great. Through you, Madam Chair, Roy Alexander, I'd like to make a comment on the application. Regrettably, I'm not fully aware of what the hydrological examination would have come back with, but does that assess the impact on the water table or any nearby wells with the increased capacity? I appreciate that bathrooms would be trucked in, but I'm uncertain as to the provisioning of water for multiple guests at a site.
Can you answer that?
Yes, through you, Mayor Latchford. This facility is not going, the washroom trailers are going to have water tanks that come with them. It's not going to be drawing on water from the domestic supply. So there should be, the study that was undertaken was a hydrologic evaluation. It wasn't a hydrogeologic evaluation. So it didn't look at the water consumption, because no permanent buildings are being proposed, and there's no proposed increase in draw on the supply from the well at that property. They're going to be using washroom trailers that come with water tanks.
We'll read the recommendation. The application Z-17 2021 to amend the zoning on a parcel of land owned by Isabel Beauvais, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, and Richard Clark, known municipally as 157 Nickel Road, legally described as part of Lot 26, Concession 6, Geographic Township of Almac-Haldeman, from Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside and Oak Ridges Moraine Plan Review Zone to the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Exception 8 in brackets ORMCO-8 zone in the Township of Almac-Haldeman zoning bylaw 19/2019 as amended to be approved. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Booth? All in favor? Carried. So this will move on in the next portion of our meeting into the bylaws. Our next zoning application is Z-18 2021 163 Stuart Road. Margaret Benz is the owner. The agent is Chris Hoskin. Want to take us through that one, Jennifer, please?
Certainly, through you, Mayor Latchford. Application Z-18 2021 applies to land located at 163 Stuart Road in part of Lot 26, Concession 4, Geographic Haldeman. And this zoning bylaw amendment is required as a condition of consent applications AH 13, 2021 and AH 14, 2021, which were conditionally approved by the Land Division Committee of Adjustment on September 23rd, 2021. The requested zoning bylaw amendment will result in the conditionally approved severed lots being rezoned to the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Exception 7 zone, prohibiting all residential uses on the property. The Oak Ridges Marine environmental zoning will remain on the eastern portion of the conditionally approved severed lots. With this application, if you'll remember, the consents were granted as surplus farm. The retained parcel is a surplus farm dwelling lot, which is developed with a single detached dwelling and some accessory structures. One of the conditions of that consent was that the severed lands be rezoned to prohibit residential construction because they are located on the Oak Ridges Marine and in an agricultural area. One of the other conditions of consent was that the main barn on the proposed on the subject property be demolished along with 2 silos. So the lands are located on the Oak Ridges Marine and designated Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Agricultural and Oak Ridges Marine Natural Linkage. The application for consents was permitted as a surplus farm dwelling, with the agricultural land being retained for future agricultural purposes, and so that no new residential uses could be created on it, which is the requirement of this application. MDS calculations were mandated by both the PPS and the Township of Alderman official plan. Calculations were not required because no residential uses or sensitive land uses are going to be permitted on the properties. The application, we received comments from the county. It conforms to the intent of the county official plan. So with this application, the developed portion of the property will remain in the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Zone and the Oak Ridges Marine Environmental Zone and Oak Ridges Marine Plan Review Zone, but only the agricultural lands will be rezoned to the Oak Ridges Marine Countryside Exception 7 zone, prohibiting residential development on them. Public circulation was undertaken. No comments were received. The original consent application was reviewed by the manager of Public Works, who had no concerns. Lower Trent had no concerns with the proposed application, nor did Northumberland County. I haven't received any public comments on this application, and the recommendation is that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved and that the severed lands be rezoned to prohibit future residential development on them.
Thank you. Is the applicant or the agent on, wishing to speak? No. Any comments from the public? From council? None? Okay, I'll read the recommendation. The application Z 18-2021 by Margaret Benz, agent Chris Hoskin, to amend the zoning on a parcel of land located in part of Lot 26, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Haldeman, from the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Zone to the Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Exception 7 Zone in the Township of Haldeman, zoning bylaw 19-2019 as amended be approved. Have a mover, please. Councillor Booth, second. Deputy Mayor Gibson, all in favor? Carried. Our next item on the agenda is 7. It's communications, and we have received communication from Enbridge Gas with the notice of study commencement and virtual open house for the new gas lines going down into the Newawton area. So be it resolved that the email correspondence received from Enbridge Gas Inc., dated November 1st, 2021, be received and filed. Could I have a mover, please?
I'll move that. I'll move that, Mayor Latchford.
Is the seconder. So on this, I think there are going to be a lot of people pretty happy with this route. So, and they've been waiting a long time, so. And Bridge was happy that we received the funding and able to bring this forward. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Item 8 is our bylaws, and our first bylaw is bylaw number 99, 2021. And being a bylaw to amend the official plan, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019, as amended by the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman for Isabel and Richard. Well, Isabel, how do you pronounce that? Gobert? Concession 6, part of lot 26, geographic Haldeman, be read and deemed to be council. We voted in favor of, so deemed to be passed this 25th day of November 2021. Any comments from council? And I need a mover and a second. Councillor Booth is the mover, second. Councillor Phelps. All in favor? Carried. And our next bylaw is bylaw number 111, 2021, to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19, 2019 regarding Margaret Benz, Chris Hoskin concession 4, part of lot 26. I'll read the motion. Be it resolved that bylaw number 111-2021, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19-2019 as amended of the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman for Margaret Benz, agent Chris Hoskin, concession 4, part of lot 26, geographic Haldeman, be read and deemed to be passed this 25th day of November 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Hogg, second. Deputy Mayor Gibson. All in favor? Carried. Item 9 is a delegation, and it's a presentation by Richard Simchuk regarding secondary dwellings. Mr. Simchuk.
Through you, Mayor Latchford. Mr. Simchuk will need to unmute either his computer or telephone in order to make his presentation.
Okay.
How was that? How was the sound?
The sound is fine, Mr. Simchuk. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Using the, thank you. We're making a little bit of history before I make my presentation. This is a first time rather for me in using this form of Zoom communications. So please bear with me. And also, I would request that my name be used in full for the record. I do have a surname, Simchuk, and it's part of all the documentation that I sent in so far. Now, I would also ask Madam Chair to be a little bit indulgent with me, since part of my recommendation, or a significant part of it, is quoting a number of official documents, and they take most of the time. So I may go over a little bit, a half minute or so, in over the 10-minute restriction. Mayor Latchford, members of council, staff, and visitors, thank you for the opportunity of presenting an application for an amendment to zoning bylaw 4.30.2 which addresses the matter of constructing a secondary dwelling in an accessory structure. By way of brief background, my property on Community Center Road, Concession 4, parts of lots 28 and 29, according to the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, is zoned countryside and zoned agricultural according to the county zoning bylaw. The rules in all documents are complex, as well as in some cases inconsistent, and it has been quite frustrating to bring together a proposal which addresses these inconsistencies. Even bylaw enforcement official Darrell Hall has admitted that the township bylaws have errors, and these will be addressed sometime in the new year. Current township zoning bylaw permits an accessory building, and Darrell informs me that I could build one even, as he put it, tomorrow. Further, a secondary dwelling, according to this bylaw, does not allow building within accessory structure, and that is the basic reason for this delegation and request for an amendment. Bit of history. For the past year, as I've indicated in my attachment to the application, I reviewed the many Ontario acts and relevant documents dealing with secondary residences. To underline my thoroughness in researching, I have many past experiences in other jurisdictions and levels of government, including as a member of the Township's Police Services Board, where I was responsible for presenting the police budget, among other issues, and may I add, initiating the impending amalgamation of Northumberland County's 5 township police boards. I reviewed hundreds of pages of acts, regulations, and other relevant documents, including the Ontario Planning Act, the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs Act, the Housing Services Act 2011, the Ontario Building Code, Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, Ministry of Municipal Affairs, Alnwick Official Plan, Zoning Bylaw, and Building Bylaws, as well as the Home Builders Guide, as well as the Eastern Ontario Municipalities Conference 2014, dealing with secondary residences. Now addressing my experience locally. In an initial fact-finding discussion with the Director of Planning, she immediately informed me that a secondary residence in my situation would require rezoning, which she stated at the time that she would not support, despite my not having presented any details whatsoever, and despite the Township's official plan allowing such in Section 5. I then began the research to find other options. I discovered that my neighbor, the Ivory family, whose property is exactly in the same zone as mine, was able to construct a secondary residence in an accessory building. However, to get around the bylaw, as I was informed, a walkway was built to join the two structures, and the walkway was interpreted locally as being, quote, within the principal residence. I addressed this matter in my correspondence attached to this request to appear, and will not waste time in repeating the issue, but it is germane. Furthermore, in my researches, I discovered that many communities in this province, including those in the Oak Ridges Moraine, had approved separate secondary residences. These, among many others, include the City of Kawartha Lakes, Township of Wainfleet, Tay Valley Township, Town of Smith Falls, City of Ottawa, Mississauga, City of Brantford, Howick Township. Admittedly, some may not be affected by Oak Ridges Moraine restrictions, but the basic concept of a secondary dwelling is receiving wide support and approvals, and even requirements across the province. In fact, the provincial government appears to mandate that municipalities implement regulations to permit them as follows. The most significant provincial statement in these acts relate directly to my situation, and I've shared this information with Bylaw Officer Darrell Hall in my correspondence to him several days ago. Looking at the Housing Services Act 2011, and that's 2011, 10 years ago, Section 180 states, and I quote, "In the event of a conflict between this act and another act or regulation made under another act, this act prevails, except where otherwise provided in this act," and I repeat for emphasis, this act prevails, and this is important, as you'll see in a moment. Further in this act, in Schedule 2, regarding amendments to the Planning Act, it states, and I quote again, Clause 2J of the Planning Act is repealed and the following is substituted. The adequate provision of a full range of housing, including affordable housing. I repeat, a full range of housing. Full, in my estimation, means completely inclusive. I further quote from the Act. Section 16 of the Act is amended by adding the following subsection. It deals with section unit policies. Without limiting what an official plan is required to or may contain under subsection 1 or 2, an official plan shall, I stress shall, contain policies that authorize the use of a second residential unit by authorizing A, use of 2 residential units in a detached house. And this section doesn't apply to me, but this one does. B, the use of a residential unit in a building or structure ancillary to a detached house, semi-detached house or row house, if the detached house, semi-detached house or row house contains a single residential unit. And that, members of council, is precisely my situation. And in my opinion, these statements support what I have been attempting to receive at least tentative approval to construct a secondary dwelling in an accessory building during my preliminary discussions with Bylaw Official Hall, or making formal application for a building permit at the time, all in accordance with the township's Home Builder's Guide. And I must add that had I been aware of this a year ago, I could have saved thousands of dollars. And as everyone is aware, building costs have skyrocketed due to many recent factors. Basically, I've been unable to make firm or even any commitments to suppliers and tradespeople as a result of this delay, or at the very least being made aware of other options, acts, and regulations, which I'm sharing with you now. In reviewing other items on today's agenda, I note that there are other requests for amendments to bylaws of property owners subject to the Oak Ridges Moraine Plan limitations. But obviously, my request is not a precedent with respect to Oak Ridge's restrictions, which may have been interpreted as inviolable. It would appear that they are not. I must add that my planned secondary residence will be built with, quote, net zero effect on the environment, and in every instance complies with every single aspect of the Oak Ridges Moraine philosophy and direction, as well as with the official plan, zoning, and building bylaws of Northumberland and Olney Parliament. Such technology as advanced solar panels, geothermal heating, heat exchangers, and well water will negate the necessity to connect to the grid. Additional municipal services will be negligible, if any. As indicated previously, the purpose is to allow me to remain on my property with my son, assuming the principal residence and expanding the, at the moment, a farming operation as an apiary, exotic woodlot, and maple syrup operation, all of which have been in limbo due to this delay in approvals. Township's 2015 official plan in Section 5, unless amended more recently, seems to permit a secondary residence for retiring farmers, but with rezoning. And since the planning director had indicated to me that she would not support it, one may wonder who is ultimately responsible for making decisions, elected representatives of taxpayers or civil servants. However, should the council not approve the request to permit the secondary residence either by an amendment or exception, it's my intention to apply for a building permit as an accessory structure using the draft architectural drawings already submitted to the building official and simply relabel them as an accessory structure. It would appear that the design of accessory structures in the township is not addressed in the bylaws, but of course all will be in accordance with the height, offsets, and other building bylaw restrictions. Regardless, again, should council not approve any amendment, it will still be my intention to investigate the other options available in other areas which will address these restrictions, and even to provide assistance for the future benefit of other taxpayers considering a similar possibility. That has been my style over many years. In summary, quoting from the Ontario Municipal Affairs documents, Secondary Units 2017, quote, Section 16 of the Planning Act requires municipal official plans to authorize second units in a building or structure ancillary to these housing types, provided that the primary dwelling does not contain a second unit. Mine does not. Furthermore, Section 35 requires that each local municipality ensure that its zoning bylaw gives effect to the policies described in Section 16.3. Further, the Provincial Policy Statement 2014 states, Section 143 of the policy statement directs municipalities to permit all forms of housing to provide an appropriate range and mix of housing types and densities, including affordable housing. Further, municipalities should permit and facilitate all forms of residential intensification and redevelopment, including second units. These are Ontario government statements, not mine, but of course I agree with them. Bylaw, which allows a secondary residence, appears to be in conflict with the intent of the Moraine Act, which is to preserve the ecology of the region. Specifically, the local bylaw appears to oblige the building inspector to approve the proposal while keeping within strict rules, which would result in the destruction of many trees when instead other more favorable options are possible. Bylaw before council for an amendment is the only practical way to resolve the ambiguity while meeting the intent of both the Moraine Act and bylaw. The Housing Services Act, as I've mentioned, nevertheless, overrides the other acts which mandates municipalities like Alnwick to support this type of secondary residence, as evidenced by other municipalities who have already updated their bylaws. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the patience shown by Building Official Hall. Although we may have differed on interpreting certain aspects of this proposal, we both agreed that our ultimate goal is the same. Thank you for the opportunity of addressing council. I look forward to a decision which results in a satisfactory conclusion for all concerned, not just for myself, but for all taxpayers. I'm open to questions, and if not having an immediate answer, we'll provide one as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simchuk. Are there any questions from council for the planning department or for Mr. Simchuk? Our zoning bylaw was updated. However, we don't have it this specifically in our official plan after speaking to our planner that as some other municipalities have. We just recently, county received an official plan update from Hamilton Township to put this in their official plan. And I brought a copy of that out. So I don't know if council wants to suggest that the work be done and that we do similar. We don't have to reinvent it, but do similar so that we have the official plan document along with the zoning bylaw. Jennifer may wish to speak on this, but I know that other municipalities are doing it as well into their official plans.
Through you, Mayor Latchford. I have had a number of discussions with Mr. Simchuk regarding the secondary dwelling unit policies, or sorry, regulations in our zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw policies were adopted by council, and I believe whenever I discuss the potential of a zoning bylaw amendment with any proponent, I always say I make recommendations, council ultimately makes the decision. So while I try to let people know whether I can support something, but it's ultimately not me that makes the decision, it's council that makes the decision. So when I was discussing these regulations and contained in our zoning bylaw with Mr. Simchuk, I explained that the secondary dwelling, in our zoning bylaw, they're called secondary dwelling unit policy regulations. do not permit a second dwelling unit in an accessory building on the Oak Ridges Moraine. They are permitted outside of the Oak Ridges Moraine, but not on the Oak Ridges Moraine. And when I received Mr. Simchuk's information, I was forwarded copies of some of information that he provided to Daryl, specifically with respect to Section 180 of the Strong Communities Through Affordable Housing Act that he's referenced. I reached out to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing because I wanted to make sure that the regulations that we had in our zoning bylaw were what they're supposed to be. So I contacted Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, asking them whether or not our provisions were correct. And I received the following response. Your approach appears to be correct. Application of a second units tool, now called additional residential units tool, is different in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan area because the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan is an OREG 140-02 under the Oak Ridges Moraine Act. As the ORMCP, Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, is a regulation, Planning Act tools, including second units, do not apply. The ORMCP provides applicable direction in the definition of single dwelling that I've copied below. So these are definitions that are contained in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. So single dwelling means a building containing only one dwelling unit and in any area other than an area within the natural core area or natural linkage area includes a building containing one primary unit and no more than one secondary dwelling unit. The definition allows for a secondary dwelling unit within a building containing a primary dwelling unit. There are no permissions in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan for a dwelling in an ancillary building. Furthermore, in accordance with the definition, secondary dwelling units are not permitted in natural core and natural linkage areas. They go on to say, for consistency, municipalities often use the same terminology within the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan area, i.e., as that outside, i.e. additional dwelling units, with additional limitations on the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. Then I reached out to them again and I wanted to confirm that Section 180 did not mean that those sections of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan were null and void by the Section 180 of the Strong Communities. I just said I have a question regarding Section 180 of the Strong Communities Act through affordable housing. Section 180 states, in the event of a conflict between the Act and any other act or regulation made under this Act prevails except where otherwise provided in this Act. And she responded, Section 180 of the Strong Communities Through Affordable Housing Act referenced by the resident has no application to permission regarding additional residential units, ARUs, in the Oak Ridges Moraine. Section 180 refers to this act being the Housing Services Act 2011 and is irrelevant to the Planning Act additional residential unit provisions. While the Planning Act requires municipalities to permit additional residential units, previously second units, it is recognized that there may be inherent constraints within portions of a municipality or community which would make these areas inappropriate for additional residential units, such as flood-prone areas or those with inadequate servicing or other policy constraints, such as those expressed in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. So I received response from Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that the regulations that we have in our zoning bylaw do reflect the provincial policy documents. Now, Mr. Simchuk is correct. We went straight to regulations because at the time the secondary or dwelling unit policies or additional residential unit policies were coming into effect. We were doing a new zoning bylaw, and we put those regulations in our zoning bylaw that would permit the use sooner. So when we do a housekeeping official plan amendment, I believe I already mentioned that I wanted to remove the ownership criteria for consents, having to own a property for 3 years, we can pass a official plan amendment that would include it. But I wouldn't recommend, at least based on the information that I have been provided, that we change our approach to additional residential units on the Oak Ridges Moraine. I also spoke with Dwayne Campbell at Northumberland County. A lot of municipalities are now just getting their policies and regulations in place in their documents. And this is the approach that we're taking is the same approach that they are taking. They're not permitting additional dwelling units on the Oak Ridges Moraine in accessory buildings.
Okay. Well, if I may.
Councillor Phil?
Yes, through the mayor. Complicated procedure, but my understanding is that that the Oak Ridges legislation trumps everything else at this point. My secondary comment would be that Mr. Simchuk could be accommodated once we adjust things, but we're in flux at the moment. Can you comment on that, Jennifer? Did I read that correctly?
No, Mr. Simchuk, it's my understanding that Mr. Simchuk wants to construct another dwelling unit in an accessory building on the Oak Ridges Moraine. And under the policies or the regulations that we have available, he is able to build one within the existing dwelling or attached to the existing dwelling, but not in an accessory structure.
Yes, that's my read. And so there is a way for Mr. Simchuk to achieve his end goal, but that would be the recommended path. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct. It would be in addition to his existing dwelling.
Yeah. Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
May I, Madam
Thanks.
Chair? May I
Yes.
comment?
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. I understand the situation very well, except my reading of Section 180, completely different. I guess it's a difference of interpretation of the English language. That's number one. Secondly, I did speak with as I pointed out, my neighbor was able to build a secondary residence in an ancillary building by building a 20-foot walkway to join the main building. And the walkway has been interpreted as being within the principal residence. When I suggested that in order to preserve the trees in accordance with the Oak Ridges Moraine Plan and ecological requirements, I could build a walkway joining my principal residence, but it would have to be 200 feet in length. And of course, Daryl, if I may use the first name, indicated that that would not be acceptable since we must use, as he said, common sense. So somewhere between a 200-foot walkway and a 20-foot walkway, which was approved, would be accessible. But I asked him what would be, and of course he would not commit himself, and I understand that fully. But there seems to be a paradox and a way around the bylaw. I only suggest that there be an exemption, as there are other exemptions to the Oak Ridges Moraine, as I pointed out earlier, with other bylaw requests, exemptions that I heard today. In addition to that, the planning director also has quoted from the Oak Ridges Moraine information referring to 2 areas. I am not in those 2 areas. I'm in the countryside area, and for good reason. I have checked to make sure that the boundary where I wanted to build a secondary residence is not mentioned in the restricted 2 areas, which the planning director has mentioned in her presentation. I am in countryside. perhaps the planning director may clarify that.
Jennifer?
Through you, Mayor Latchford. When I referenced the two sections of the two areas of the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, in those two areas, no additional dwelling units are permitted. It's not that they're not permitted in an accessory building or an ancillary building. It's that in those two areas, the natural core area and the natural linkage area, no secondary dwelling units are permitted.
So you, Madam Chair, I am not in either one of those two areas. I'm in the countryside area.
So my question, I guess, is what does the policy state as far as the minimum or maximum a walkway can be, regardless of any situation? What's the minimum? What's the maximum? Or does the policy state it?
Through you, Mayor Latchford, this is a building question, a building code question as to what an addition to a dwelling would be. It's my understanding that the adjacent or the neighboring property where they built an addition onto their existing house with a walkway. You turn one way to go into the house, one way to go into the new secondary dwelling. And that was an addition onto the existing house. Now, this is a building code thing that Daryl would have to address, but I think the proposal that Mr. Simchuk had come up with was a 200-foot walkway that would be considered an addition. And there was some discussion over that as to whether that is actually an addition to an existing dwelling and whether it. So I will leave that. I believe Daryl is in our meeting. I don't know if you would like to comment at this point. Oh, I see he has unmuted himself and his pretty picture is there.
Daryl, do you wish to comment?
Sure, I can make a little comment. Thanks through you, Madam Chair. They're really, under the building code, to be honest with you, there is no definition of how big of an addition can be to define it onto the dwelling. When Mr. Simchuk and I talked at his site about the project next door, I don't know if it would be fair for council to even make a decision or even look at this until they've seen both plans kind of together. My thoughts were the one next door was a garage below with a one-bedroom apartment above it, with a common entrance like Jennifer had mentioned. You walk in, you go one way to a door inside the dwelling, you go the next way inside the garage. We have those on multiple houses around. This one was for Mr. Simchuk's proposal, and I understand what he's trying to do and not clear trees around his dwelling, his existing dwelling that's there. But he proposed a 200-foot, walkway, and in my mind, I don't know how you would join that properly to make that an addition. We really don't have any plans showing that. It's just a proposal that he's put in so far to make it energy efficiency for the home, to meet the building code and the intent of the addition. Again, there's no definition really of how big the addition could be other than your setbacks and your lot coverage. But I guess until we had a proper set of plans and a proposal, properly, I really can't comment on, what the addition would look like or if it would be classified as an addition.
So if it's a walkway and there's significant land, regardless of what the zoning is, you could go into that walkway at any point and turn left or turn right to be attached to both homes. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'm supposing. I mean, the drawing I have is just basically a square box to a square box with a walkway labeled in between it. So we don't have a full set of drawings here to see what the full proposal is.
So I'm thinking that Mr. Simchuk could probably provide that to you. And I guess the thing is whether or not that would need an amendment to our official plan or zoning. It's, the province in all its wisdom, and they're promoting secondary homes. They never really give you the bottom line. Yes, we want the secondary homes, but they don't say the maximum length of separation between them has to be X number of feet. So they kind of create a bit of a problem for themselves. And I'm wondering if we can find maybe that information out through the MPP's office and a call to them. There's one of the workers there has a pretty good connection with municipal affairs as well, and has worked on other projects for us to get information. Just a thought, but Councillor Booth has a question.
I'm through you, your worship, to either Daryl or Jennifer. I'm not sure. So what's the official definition of a walkway? Is that
There
an
isn't
actual
one.
structure? Could it be pavement stones is considered a walkway? I mean, sounds pretty open to definition of what that could be.
I would think if it's for a secondary house, it would have to be covered and heated. If you're looking at like a breezeway, the definition of a breezeway and an extension on that to join two homes, you'd have to have heat and cover.
Well, and that's why I'm saying
probably,
everybody's vision of a
Daryl?
walkway, when you say a walkway to me could be like a garden path walkway, or are we actually talking breezeway to me means something different, right?
Right,
Like you're
right.
saying. So is there a definition for that, Daryl, of whether it's 15 feet or 200 feet?
There is a definition in the building code of breezeways. I believe I haven't looked, or I can do some research on that and get back to you. If it's just a stone walkway, that would not be an addition to a house.
Exactly.
And that wouldn't make this structure or this addition or this secondary dwelling within the primary residence. And for it to be 200 feet away with a walkway or covered in breezeway and an addition, you got to keep in mind when you start additions in the building, you're going to have to attach foundation to foundation. So I mean, when I mentioned common sense to Mr. Simchuk, and I think we kind of agreed with it on site, it was we need to look at this as more than just a walkway. This is an addition to an existing dwelling to make it within. So I think, in my mind, as a building official and as a builder in the day, an addition is somewhere close enough in proximity to the existing dwelling. And I think that was the whole intent of making, secondary dwellings inside the existing structures, like basement apartments. And, the one across the road was, an addition, which is in the proximity of the existing dwelling.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I've been cut off.
No, you're back on.
Well, something's happened here.
Through you,
Mr.
Mayor
Simchuk.
Latchford.
Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Through you, Mayor Latchford. I think Mr. Simchuk was just having a difficult time hearing the mayor.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I make a comment, or Sherry, I believe, was first?
You go ahead, and then Deputy Mayor Gibson.
From a senior's perspective, if we're looking at the equivalent of a granny flat here, or the concept of a granny flat, certainly the 200 foot separation between the main house and the addition to me, wouldn't be a wise decision. You want to have access, easy access to both buildings. And I think, we have to look after our seniors that way. And so I certainly wouldn't be supportive of a large distance between the two buildings for that reason. Need to think of our aging population, accessibility, etc. That would be my comment.
Deputy Mayor Gibson?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Latchford. I think Mr. Simchuk raises some good points for us to consider in terms of language and the way that, our official plan is written. So it probably won't be the first time that it comes to us. I think people are interested in secondary dwellings, and it's been something that the province has, supported. And I think it would be to our benefit to get clarification now on some of the points that he raises. So I would be in favor of sending this back to staff just for some clarification or recommendation to changes so that we don't run into these issues in future.
Thank you. I think that we are going to run into these issues in the future, especially with the size of the Oak Ridges moraine in our township. And, we can't really say today that the 200-foot attachment is right or wrong and base it on age. Because, there's a lot of people who are interested in doing a secondary dwelling for their children or just simply for rental purposes. So that's the big catch that I see, is that how everybody is going to interpret what the separation distance or the attachment to the house and how it has to be. That's going to be a problem. And I agree, it's not going to be a problem just in this township. It'll be other places as well. So I think we need to find out more information. I'm not sure if it's going to have to be forced by Mr. Simchuk or someone else, whether it's here or in another municipality, to apply for an amendment to the official plans, because at some point that precedent is going to be set somewhere in Ontario. So.
May I comment?
Sir, go ahead.
May I comment, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Simchuk.
Yes, through you,
can
Madam Chair, a couple of things. With respect to the walkway, I've done considerable research on definition and definitions of walkways in this province. And as I pointed out earlier, there are inconsistencies. Firstly, when I spoke with Darrell Hall, I indicated to him I was prepared to put in a heated covered walkway of 200 feet. And that was part of the initial discussions when he told me that 200 feet would not be acceptable and that I had to use common sense. Of course, I didn't spend a lot of money on an architect, waste a lot of money on an architect to design a walkway that he would not support. I felt I was using common sense in this, but however, that's where we differed. So I did look at that, and the walkway would have been all in accordance with the building code with respect to footings, heating, and so on. We did discuss that, and yes, they were preliminary sketches, and that was all in accordance with the Home Builder's Guide and discussing these potential developments with the bylaw officer. So I've tried to do my homework in that respect, but that was not acceptable, and therefore I didn't spend any more money on dealing with that. And in reviewing all the other documents, which I've already referred to, I felt that my interpretation of the acts was as it is. Now, again, I just referred to the planning director's comment and mentioned that the two Oak Ridges moraine areas, that clouds the issue. I am not in either one of those two. I am in a countryside, and moraine plan not mention countryside as being restricted. The current bylaw, and my reading of the bylaw, as I pointed out, that is restricted. So I'm not so sure that we have to go through a lengthy process. If you're supportive of the concept, as I hear that some members are, I ask that an exemption be made with respect to that particular aspect of the bylaw. And I've tried to do my work thoroughly. I'm not trying to go around any bylaws or laws, as I pointed out, and I hope you agree with that. But I do need a secondary residence. I'm not prepared to cut down mature trees in order to accommodate the bylaw as it's being interpreted. Or I really need the maximum distance between a walkway. If I'm to construct a walkway, I need to know what the maximum distance is acceptable in a covered, heated walkway, which already has been constituted by my neighbor as an addition to the house. And I also pointed out that I could put a door halfway in the walkway to turn left or right. That's not an issue at all. But if that's the stumbling block, I'm prepared to do that, but I need to know what the maximum is before spending a huge amount of money on architectural drawings. And by the way, I've already sent architectural sketches and drawings to Daryl with respect to the proposed secondary dwelling. So we have on record at least what I was planning to erect. I also followed the maximum footage, 50% according to the current bylaw, 50% living area of the current principal residence. I followed everything. The only stumbling block is the interpretation of that particular section of the bylaw, as well as the interpretation of Section 180. Further to that, not just Section 180, but the following sections that I've already mentioned. With respect to, well, it's on record. By the way, I have submitted a copy of my presentation to clerk and CAO for the record. And I hope that in any review of this, that is very, very carefully read. I'm looking at the Planning Act, Section 16, requires municipal official plans to authorize second units. I won't take the time of council to go over that, but that is quite specific to me. I read the English very, very carefully, as I'm sure some of you know, and that's my interpretation. So it requires official plans to authorize second units. Not sure why staff is opposed to this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Simchuk. And we'll call this at this point to an end. And council, we need direction to staff on what the next step should be. Were you going to make the motion on?
I can't hear the
To,
chair, sorry.
does it need to come back to staff to go forward? to dig deeper and find out the questions that have been asked, because we're going to get this again in the future. We know how wide can the, or long can the walkway be. So how do we want to handle this right now?
I
You
agree.
got any suggestions, Pat?
Yes, you could send it back to staff for review and recommendation.
Okay. So we'll send this, I need a motion to that effect then, to send this issue back to staff and bring back a recommendation on everything that's been discussed here this morning. Deputy
Yeah.
Mayor Gibson? Deputy Mayor Gibson? She's waving. You're on mute.
I'll
Yeah,
make,
she's
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
Okay, the motion's moved by Deputy Mayor Gibson and that's second by Councillor Phillip. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, members of council. I must add, final comment. I know how the pioneers felt.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Simchuk. So item 10 is announcements and notice of motions from council. Deputy Mayor Gibson, you're first.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Philip.
I have one piece of information regarding the proposed gas line in in the southern portion of the township, and I just wanted to make Jennifer aware that there has been a lot of communication to me regarding fiber optics and the high-speed internet.
You're way ahead of it right now, Councillor Phillip. We don't know what's going to happen there.
Okay, well,
hasn't been any announcement.
Yeah, well, I am aware of that, but I wondered if, I just wanted to make sure that Jen was aware that this is something that is of high interest.
It's high interest, but we don't know. And neither would Jennifer.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Booth,
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Hogg.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, I have a quick question. It's not really related to planning, but I got to ask it because of the time. Our communications flyer, Pat, is that about ready to go out next week?
It's not ready to go out next week, but Jennifer Steen is working on it.
Okay, because the target date was next week. So hopefully that, we don't want it too late into the season. That was the idea of it, is getting it out early December. Okay.
Yep.
That's good. Approval of our confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw number 135-2021, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Thursday, November 25th, 2021, be read and deemed to be passed this 25th day of November, 2021. Have a mover? By Councillor Hogg, second by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Carried. And be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting be adjourned at 10:41 a.m. Mover? Deputy Mayor Gibson, second by Councillor Philip. All in favor? Carried. Council, I have some signing for you to do. It'll probably be delivered to your homes. If you're not in at the first of the week or by the end of this week. Okay, just so you're aware. Thanks. Is all council still on? Yeah.
We're not recording anymore.